Welcome to the Uncensored Self Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Gillen, and this is a space where women who value achievement, success, accomplishment, and wealth, but also crave happiness, love, joy, and deep fulfillment come to remember that we get to have both. Not by doing more, but by being more of who we truly are. In this show, we explore identity, energy, alignment, and embodiment because you didn't come here to follow someone else's rules. You came to right your own. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Uncensored Self Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Gillen, and today I'm actually bringing you a little bit of a teaching, which feels fun and different from what we've been working on so far in 2026. But what we're going to drill down into today is the difference between reaction and response, right? The difference between reacting to your life, the difference between everything going on outside of you dictating how you feel and how you show up, to actually being able to decide, how do I want to respond to what's going on in my life, right? Because what I believe to be true is that the quality of your life is directly tied to whether or not you live in reaction or response. That's what I've learned. And that's what I work with my clients on a lot, right? Like if we're just constantly reacting to the stimulus outside of us, of course, we're going to continue to feel like shit, right? But when we learn how to actually harness our power and respond intentionally, we take back our power. So what you're going to hear me say throughout this conversation is that reaction is keeping you stuck in the past and response is putting you back in the driver's seat, right? Response creates your future. Reaction keeps you stuck in the past. Response creates your future. And here's the truth, and this is a little confrontational, if you will, but most people aren't living their lives. They're reacting to them. If you are living in constant stress, chaos, and overwhelm, you are not living your life. You are not dictating how your life goes. You are reacting to your life circumstances and you're just being pulled around through life of what's happening outside of you. So it's like that chaotic feeling. And if it's always overwhelming and it just feels like Groundhog Day and it doesn't matter how much change you actually impact, it still feels the same on the inside. It's because you're reacting. And I honestly think that reaction is the fastest way to feel powerless without even realizing it. We don't even realize that it's happening. So what I want to take you through in this podcast is really to show you why reacting is keeping you stuck and then how responding is actually going to change your energy. And ultimately, as you know, when we play the energy game, you change your energy, you change your results, right? So if our results change, our experience of life changes. And actually, when our experience of life changes, our results change. So let's start with kind of, again, from a teaching perspective is how I'm going to go through this episode today, but what reaction actually is and actually why most people live here. And so a lot of people think that their reactions are personality flaws. This is just the way that I am. I can't change the fact that I react angrily to this, and this. I can't change the fact that this happens to me or that I show up this way, or if somebody's going to speak to me like that, I'm going to speak back to them. Like we think that it's just who we are and that's why we're reacting. But actually what reaction is a conditioned survival behavior. That reaction that you're used to giving, that stimuli is what's keeping you in survival, right? When you are not intentional about where you are placing your energy gets wrapped up in the outside world and your body naturally goes on into survival mode because that's the energy of the world outside of us. So if we're not taking the time to take care of the world inside of us and responding just to the world outside of us, of course, we're going to feel like we're in survival mode. That is why so many powerful women, despite, like I said, having achieved a lot of incredible things, feel like they are living in survival mode. And it's just because you're reacting to outside stimuli. And because universal law works 100% of the time, what we react to, what we focus on expands. And so if we're constantly focusing on the outside world and the outside stimuli and pretending like we don't have any control over how we react with this situation, then we're going to continue to create the same circumstances. And sometimes those circumstances actually wind up getting worse because you're so out of alignment. So when I talk about reaction, this is how I describe the mind game to my clients. So we talk about this a lot in business therapy. We talk about the difference between the mind game and the energy game. And the mind game is how most of the world lives, right? We live in our thinking mind all of the time. That's why people are overthinking. There's a lot of, overstimulated. We hear a lot of that. Dysregulated. That's actually all coming from living in the mind. We're not designed to live in the mind. We have given our mind jobs that it is not our minds, right? And like I said, you're responding to the stimuli instead of choosing, how do I want to react to this? How do I want to react to that person cutting me off in traffic, right? How do I want to react to that email that I just got? How do I want to react to that child who's maybe not doing what I asked them to do? How do I want to react to that client who is frustrated right now? How do I want to react to how I look at my bank account? Or how do I want to respond, right? So right now we're reacting. I look at my bank account and it makes me feel a certain way. Somebody cuts me off in traffic and fuck them, right? A kid isn't behaving and you're frustrated and now you're worried and what's wrong with my kid and why won't my kid listen? Right? We're constantly stressed out about the schedule and everything just feels so crazy and chaotic all of the time. And it feels like everything is happening to you. The way that I describe this with my clients, it's like a game of whack-a-mole, right? Like you're just literally hitting things on the head, trying to make sure that they're okay. Boom, 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 right? And it doesn't feel good because you don't know where the next one is going to pop up. And that's where that overstimulation is coming from. You're just reacting. You're not seeing the situation and then making a choice. So I want to be really, really clear is like reaction versus response, because at the end of the day, somebody might argue, hey, Ryan, isn't this just semantics, right? Reaction, response, same thing. The email is the email. Am I reacting or if I'm responding? Reacting again feels like you don't have a choice. Response is a conscious choice. So it's like, am I conscious? If I'm unconscious, I'm reacting. If I'm conscious, I'm responding. So reaction feels busy. It feels urgent. It feels overwhelming. It feels helpless. You get that email from that client and it's late and you want it to be done. But I feel like I have to respond to them because if they don't, they may never do business with me ever again. Or if I don't, they might go down the Google rabbit hole, or if I don't, right? So we feel that. That is reacting to life. That's feeling like I don't have a choice as to how to deal with this. So what I want to point out though, is when you're reacting, you're not controlling the energy. The only thing that you ever have control over is your energy, how you show up, right? That is it. We think we have control over a whole lot of things. We actually don't. We just have control over our energy. Well, when we're reacting to other people and other circumstances, we're not even have control of that. That is why you feel so out of control, because you actually are not in control in any capacity because you're living in this constant reaction. And that's where everything feels urgent. Everything feels feels on fire. Everything feels overwhelming. To even think about how do I get out of this circumstance feels overwhelming. And it just feels like I don't even know how to get the help that I need. Like I can feel the feeling coming up on my body now. I don't feel this feeling very often these days, but I can feel it right now. So what winds up happening is the energy is controlling you, and then you wind up an energetic match to what is the collective consciousness, right? So when we think of the collective consciousness, is you wind up an energetic match to the average, right? When we talk about collective consciousness, it's belief systems that we all believe in, right? If enough people believe in something, we build a belief system, we build a collective, and now we have this collective consciousness. Well, most of us are just going along with collective consciousness, which is why when people learn about the energy game and they learn about universal law, they often ask the question, well, if this is true, if we really are the creators of our own reality, and my thoughts, feelings, and actions can actually create my reality, why does the world look the way that it does? Well, because of collective consciousness, right? Because if you don't actually learn how to do this work and start responding to your world, you're just going along with the stream, if you will, right? You're just bumping along and you're, in my head, it's like this visual of, you're being swept away in, I went whitewater rafting this summer with my friends, and we actually did get booted from the boat, which was super fun. But that's the point. Like, I thought it was hilarious. I was so, I don't want to say I was unbothered. I was a little rattled, but like some of the other people, even some of my friends, were really bothered by this circumstance. Like to me, that was a reaction. Like, oh, this was awful. Like, why did our guide suck? To me, I responded. I'm like, well, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm cold and I'm wet. I'm going to get back in the boat, right? But it's like, what's in control here? But like when it comes to energy, the energy is flowing all of the time. It's whether or not you are deciding where the energy goes, right? Your focus determines, do you go down the path of least resistance, meaning not the path of least resistance, meaning do you go along with the crowd? Do you go along where the energy feels the loudest, or do you go along where the energy feels most aligned? So when you're wrapped up in the collective consciousness, you're just going along with the energy of the collective. That's why, again, when people ask the question, why does the world look the way that it does? Because of collective consciousness, because there's not enough people yet doing this work. There's not enough people yet choosing to respond to their life. They're still reacting. So collective consciousness is still winning for all intents and purposes, right? That's actually why I'm so passionate about doing this work, because when I believe that we raise the level of consciousness, when we become more responders and we learn how to respond and we teach our children how to respond and we teach, the people around us how to respond, we raise collective consciousness and we can change some of the things that are going on in our world that are really dark and terrible, right? But if the energy is controlling you and you're not controlling the energy, you are at the mercy of your subconscious programming, right? You are at the mercy of the belief systems and the identity that you have been running your entire life. That is why most people struggle with change so much, because they don't realize that change is an inside-out job, right? The world has taught us that change is outside in. If I want a different result, I have to do something different. No, if you want a different result, you have to be somebody different. And when you do that, you have to stop reacting. The only way to be different is to stop reacting in the same patterns. And if you are reacting, it's unconscious and you can't change the pattern. That's why this conversation is so important. So again, when you are reacting, you're not controlling the energy is controlling you, and you get stuck in, collective consciousness. So this is where the energetic clicks in on this, right? So reaction creates the Groundhog Day feeling because it's always pulling from the past. So let's use, say, for instance, you get an email from a client or the job you had applied for or something. It's disappointing news in this email, right? It's disappointing news, whether it's the negotiation isn't the way you wanted it in a real estate transaction, you're not getting the job that you had applied for, a client is canceling, something along those lines. Your favorite employee put in their notice, right? Like you get the email and the reaction pulls from the past. So if you have a rejection issue, which most of us do, especially as women, right? We see that as rejection. And then we pull from that old identity of somebody who gets rejected and those old triggers of what do we do when we get rejected? Most of us react in, what is the word I'm looking for? Like we get defensive. That's what I'm looking for, right? When we feel like we're getting rejected, we get defensive. And so when we've got the old identity and the old trigger and the old fear, we're giving that same response because the last time I was rejected, this is what happened. And we're just responding that same way. So that's actually why, like I said, it works. This is where the feeling that people come from. And they keep saying, I'm stuck. Every single day feels the same. And it's because you're pulling from the past to decide how to respond to something. So again, you get that email that, as a rejection, if the response to rejection is defensiveness, if you don't make a different choice, you're going to react defensively. If you say, for instance, it's good news, maybe the email that's coming in is actually really great news and it's really exciting and you did get the job, then there's some people who will get that positive thing and also not have a positive reaction because reaction pulls from the past. And maybe in the past, good things didn't stick around, right? Like the other shoe always drops. So again, this is where we can say reaction. The email is good news, but your old identity is one of where the other shoe always drops, right? Things just don't work out for people like me. Like, well, we still have 3 more steps before the thing happens. Old identity, old triggers, same response. So when we have the same response, we're putting out the same energetic signal, right? The way that I teach this with my clients, we talk a lot about this in business therapy is, your Wi-Fi signal. That Wi-Fi signal, same response, still same signal, same results. That's the Groundhog Day feeling. That's why if you are somebody who's saying like, I feel stuck, but you're not normally someone who is stuck. That's the thing. Like you might feel stuck, but that is not a place that you spend a lot of time, right? Most of you listening to this right now are high achievers. You're people who you don't get stuck, which is why this feeling is so fucking yucky to you right now, because this is not where you typically are, but you just got this old identity and these old triggers and these old fears, and they're all coming together and they're creating this Wi-Fi signal. So if we don't do something to consciously change the energy, we're going to continue to have the same results, right? Reaction is recycled energy. Recycled energy creates recycled lives. If every day feels the same, it's because you're reacting. What we need to do is we need to change into responding. Response equals choice. Now I am choosing how I respond to that email. Again, the one that maybe feels like rejection. And I'm also choosing how I respond to that email that maybe feels like a win. We are not here to react to our life. We're here to participate in it. We're actually here to create it. So responding is a choice. So and the way that I coach my clients through this all the time when we talk about like the rejection email, right? The email that says, hey, we went in a different direction or whatever that looks like to you. The way that I teach my clients and the way that I do this personally is everything is always working out for me. Everything is always working out for me. So even if I don't get the job, even if the deal doesn't go through, even if I don't get the client, even if, it's still working out for me. So the reason why this deal is falling apart, the reason why I didn't get that job, the reason why this relationship needs to end is because it needs to happen for me to get where I'm going, right? It needs to happen for me to be the best version of myself. It needs to happen for my alignment, right? When you learn to play the energy game, you realize it's all happening for you. So I get to decide what it means, right? Nothing in life has meaning except for the meaning you give it. I must say that a bajillion times a week, right? Because responding means you decide how you show up. How do you show up to rejection? Do you show up defensive and angry? Or do you show up curious? Or do you show up okay and relieved? And these days, I'm like somewhere between curious and relieved, but I definitely was defensive for many, many years. Like if a client told me no, they said unkind things in my head. Like, well, if they just want to stay stuck wherever they are, wherever, when I was selling radio advertising and somebody chose another radio station, like I took it so personally. And I was so like, that's the stupidest decision you could ever make. Why would you do that? Right. And I thought I didn't have a choice because my body is having a physiological response to rejection. But now I know that I get to decide how I show up. And now like I said, I am somewhere between curious and grateful. Curious, like I wonder why, like for me, it's like, how did I wind up being an energetic match to this person? And this isn't going forward the way that I want it to, but now it is grateful, right? Everything is always working out for me. So I am grateful when something falls apart because it means it's not for me. And I'm really glad that I don't have to continue to waste my energy on something that is not for me. You decide how you show up. You choose the energy you bring to the situation. And that way we're not outsourcing our power. We've got all of our power back inside of us in the conscious choices that I make. So what this actually winds up doing for us that is really, really exciting when we start responding is we start cleaning up our energy. We no longer, the more that we consciously choose the energy and the attention and the focus that we want to give things, our energy cleans up. We're no longer in that reactionary mode because again, the reactionary mode tends to default to negative. It tends to default to defensive, to frustrated, to overwhelmed, to here we go again. It always happens this way. Of course it's on fire fucking again, right? Like that's it. So when we start cleaning that up and we decide what meaning do I want to give this email? What meaning do I want to give, this particular circumstance? If I'm now choosing, I'm going to start cleaning up my energy. And as I start to clean up my energy, my frequency gets higher and higher, right? And it gets cleaner and cleaner. And what I start to be an energetic match for starts to shift, right? And when we clean up our energy, guys, this is where people talk about, I'm going to get a little woo for you for a hot minute. Clean energy collapses time. Clean energy collapses time. The cleaner your energy is, the faster things will happen for you. When there are people that you're like, holy fucking bananas, how did that person create that result so fucking fast? It was because their energy was clean about it, right? When something takes forever and ever and ever, it's usually we have a lot of resistance around it. When things happen really, really fast, it's when our energy is really clean. So clean energy collapses time. It creates that sense of ease and momentum and alignment. This is why so often, especially the language that I use with you guys, but in personal development, people talk about, being able to increase results while having less output. It's because, again, you're working on the energy instead of just the effort, instead of just the action. So that ease and that momentum and alignment doesn't come from no effort at all. It just feels that the effort is natural. The effort just comes to you. The effort is something you enjoy. The effort is something that stretches you in a really good way. So like I said, when things happen faster, it feels like things just clicked overnight. It's like, ooh, the energy just cleaned up. That's why, like I said, some people can do things really, really quickly and it takes a really long time. The only difference is, am I reacting or responding? But what's really important to think about, what I want to kind of drill home for you here, is this actually all starts with identity. That's why I say the two most important thing for anything in life is identity and energy. Identity and energy. And so we cannot respond consistently if you haven't decided who you are. If you haven't really owned who you are and what you want and what you're creating and what's important to you, it's going to be hard to respond consistently. It's going to be hard to clean up your energy, right? Like I said, when we clean up our energy and our responses, we have we choose our responses consciously, we start to collapse time, things start to come a little easier. Well, if we're not responding consistently, this is what I call like a mixed signal. Your Wi-Fi signal gets fuzzy, it's weak. If you haven't decided who you are and what you want, right? Like again, the Wi-Fi signal, what I put out, I get back. If I don't know what I want and I don't know where I'm going and I don't know what I want to create and I'm not really clear, I just know that I don't want to be here, my Wi-Fi signal is attracting that. So this is why the first part of so much of my work with my clients is like, what are you working on? What do you want? What are you building? What is the vision that you have for your life? Because once you decide what the vision you have for your life is, you can start responding. The reason why most people have stopped responding is because they don't actually know which way they're going, right? Or we have given our goal setting over to external things. Right? Like, who are you if your goal is a new car? Like you're the driver of a new car, but who is the driver of a new car? So this is why identity work is so important. Because first and foremost, it's reactor identity. When you're reacting to your life, you cannot be in your power. Because if you're reacting, you feel like life is happening to me. These things are happening to me. I'm a victim of my circumstances. I don't know what's going on here, but this is just, I can't help it. If this client's an asshole, I can't help it. If traffic, I can't help it. That's reactor identity. That's naturally going to continue to attract the same results. We get into the creator identity, which is the work that I do with my clients, is life happens through me. Right? I must say this a dozen times a week. Life is not happening to you. It's happening through you. It's happening through you. The energy you project is determining, not the other way around. So this is why when you learn to play the energy game and you realize I can decide the energetic signal that I want to display to the world. I can decide what my Wi-Fi signal is. I can decide what my frequency is. I can decide what my vibration is. I don't give a fuck what word you call it, right? But you can decide what that is. That's the creator identity, right? That's the energy game. That's intentional reality creation. I am deciding what I put out into the world because I know that the world is going to meet me at that frequency. So if I'm going to put out a frequency of reaction, of victim, of helplessness, of frustration, of stress, of overwhelm, that's what I'm going to get back. Right? If I put out a signal of trust, openness, optimism, excitement, everything is always working out for me, even when it doesn't look that way. Right? When I put out that energy, that's what I get back. But what I love about this so much is intentional reality creation is present moment forward. That is something my mentor I feel like drilled into my head. Present moment. The present moment, to get real esoteric, the present moment is all we have, right? Like the only moment you have is right here, right now. Right here, right now. The past is gone, right? It does not exist anymore except for in your mind, right? And the future, It's not here yet. So it doesn't exist yet. It's just a figment of your imagination. So what you're doing right here, right now with your energy is actually determining the next moment and the next moment and the next moment and the next moment. So when I choose to consciously respond to my life, I am deciding how my life is going to go. If I am unconsciously reacting to my life, I have no control over how my life goes. So let's talk about some just real life examples before we wrap up here today, right? Things like emails, right? We've talked about email, traffic, partner conversations, right? Derek and I talked about this. I don't know if you have listened to the podcast with Derek and I. We did, gosh, I don't even know when it was, but we talked about that. Like sometimes in a relationship, you react to your current partner to it from an old wound, right? Or from an old partner's behaviors or an old partner's expectations, right? So sometimes we bring that old relationship and those old triggers into our current relationships. And so if you don't learn how to respond, if you don't clean that up, you're going to wind up ruining your relationship because you're reacting to the person standing in front of you based on, again, past experience. How do I want to respond to this person standing in me right now, right? This guy's become so fucking powerful in negotiation. When you learn this, anybody who has to negotiate anything at all, whether you are negotiating with toddlers, whether you are negotiating multi-million-dollar advertising contracts, whether you are negotiating multi-million-dollar real estate deals, you're buying businesses, I don't know what the fuck you're doing, but being able to respond and choose how you respond to something is the most powerful thing you can ever do in life, right? So reaction drags the past into the present. Response keeps you here so you can decide moving forward. Like I said, reaction keeps you stuck. Response creates your future. So let's wrap up with a little how-to, a little practical. Now that you're seeing it and you're feeling it, and I've moved enough energy in your body, let me give your masculine brain a little bit of how. So first and foremost, right? What do we do here? Number one, we regulate your nervous system. Regulate your nervous system. Regulate your nervous system. You cannot respond from dysregulation. You can only react from dysregulation. So whatever tool feels best to you for nervous system regulation, I tell people all the time, that is not my thing yet. I don't have a specific modality that I recommend for my clients. I recommend them all find the one that works best for you. I started with walking outside with no headphones. That was the first way I started regulating my nervous system, was detaching from the world, leaving my phone alone, right? Leaving my phone home, actually going outside, feeling the wind on my face, the sun on my face, right? Like that's how I started. Then I got into breath work. Then I do a lot of journaling, music, different things like that. But you have to regulate your nervous system because again, remember, you are an energetic being in a physical body. If I am an energetic being in a physical body and my nervous system is my energetic signature, in order to respond, I have to regulate my nervous system, right? That's the first thing I will tell you. The second thing that I will tell you is to change what you're optimizing for. Change what you are optimizing for. This is such a big part of my platform in 2026. When we optimize for the world's version of success, when we optimize for external markers of success, meaning money and job titles and cars and houses and followers and optics and job titles and corner offices and where our shingle is hung and blah, 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 blah. If you're constantly optimizing for external validation, you're always going to be in reaction mode because you're reacting to the outside world. When you start optimizing for happiness, fulfillment, joy, fun, things that you would love, a life that you are fucking obsessed with, you create space to respond. So when we start regulating our nervous system, we start getting all the shit out of our bubble, out of our energy that isn't serving us, and we start optimizing for what would make me the happiest? What would be the most fun? What would I love the most? What would bring me the most joy? What am I most passionate about? What could I just, what feels good to even think about? And we start bringing more of that into your life. It's going to be easier and easier to respond because, again, those reactions are coming from there's a whole lot of shit happening and you're not a big fan of, right? That you're not a big fan of. And guys, this is actually why I'm really excited to roll this out. It's brand spanking fucking new. Is I built a private podcast series. I put together a private podcast series called Chase Happy Instead. And it's actually 5 episodes long. It is completely free. You do have to opt in for it because I will deliver it. It's private. It's not something you can find publicly. So it is a private podcast. It's only for people who opt in and get the emails. There's an invitation into our community to really start the conversation. But it's actually going to teach you how do I start optimizing for happiness. So if this podcast is resonating with you and you're like, okay, how do I get more practical? How do I take this even deeper? Go download or go opt in to the Chase Happy Instead podcast because it's going to really talk about how do we optimize our life in a really powerful way. And it just takes this conversation deeper, right? And so then the third thing that I'm going to tell you is I want you to just start deciding ahead of time how your life is going to go. This is actually one of the first things I teach in business therapy in lesson 1 is one of the first pieces of homework I give my client is decide ahead of time how things are going to go. As you are driving to that meeting, decide how that meeting will feel, right? If you work from home when you do everything via Zoom or voice memo or whatever, spend 5 minutes before that meeting being like, I'm really excited about this meeting. I can't wait to connect with this person. I think it's going to look like this. I really want to bring this energy to it. I really want to get excited about this thing. You decide how you want to show up. Before I sit down to record a podcast, I probably spend a solid 3 to 5 minutes really working on my energy. And what I mean by working on my energy is I decide that when I come here, I want to be fully present with you. I decide that I want this to reach the ears of the person who needs to hear this. Like I ask God, source the universe. For me, it's God, to give me the words, to give me the stories, to give me the examples, to bring me the women that I'm meant to serve. Like I decide how I want to show up to this podcast. I prep for this podcast. Like there's millions of people listening to it, even though that's not the case just yet, right? I decide the energy before you walk in. When you start deciding how things are going to go ahead of time, you're less reactionary because you already decided, right? Decisions ahead of time remove the need to react in the moment because I already decided how I want to feel. And when you start developing this habit of deciding how I want to feel about everything, it becomes easier and easier and easier to respond from that higher level, respond from that identity that you want to show up and respond from that version of you who gets every single thing that she wants, right? Here's what I know about you, okay? You are already exhausted from reacting. Responding isn't going to take more energy, right? Doing this work doesn't take more energy. It's actually going to give you your energy. So this week, notice where you're reacting. Notice where you could pause and choose instead. Do I like the way that I handled that situation? And if not, give yourself some feedback. Like coach yourself through this if you need to, okay? If this conversation resonates and you're like, whew, there's a whole lot of this, the Chase Happy Instead series, like I said, it's going to go way deeper into reoptimizing life away from urgency and towards fulfillment. I'm really passionate about that podcast series. It's really fucking good. I've re-listened to it like 3 times and I've been sharing it privately. This is the first time it's come out publicly. So I can't wait to hear what you all think of that if you choose that. If you know a woman somewhere who needs this conversation, who is living in reaction mode, who is living in survival mode, who wants a different experience of life, I ask you to please share this podcast with them. If you love the show, reviews go a really long way to share it with the world. So thank you for being here, for being part of this community. I'll see you next week, and I hope to see you inside of the Chase Happy Instead private podcast series. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Uncensored Self podcast. If this conversation cracked something open for you, trust that that's the work. And share this episode with a woman in your life who's ready to stop performing and start creating. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe, leave a review. It helps this message reach the women who need it most. Remember, you're the creator. The rules are yours. And your uncensored self, she already knows what to do. Keep leading, keep listening, keep becoming.